This is practice. He said, we're helpless to our senses. Our senses just pull us, and even we don't want to do it. The temptation is so strong. Absolutely. But here's the issue, is the senses can scream and yell, but they're not actually the decision makers in most cases. In some cases they are. I'm a neurologist, so that's what I was studying in any case before I came here. So on some level I stop myself when I make statements that I know are not exactly scientifically true. If I put my hand on a hot stove, it will pull back long before I have had the opportunity to have a thought. If I try to burn my hand on a hot stove, it's going to be actually nearly impossible to do. Because simply the reflex that happens just in my spinal cord, it's not even going to the consciousness of my brain to decide what to do about the hot stove, is going to pull my hand back. But what you're talking about is not that. What you're talking about is, it's the chocolate cake, I don't want to eat it. 20 minutes later, I discover I've eaten the entire thing. It's the cigarette, I don't want to smoke it. It's the alcohol, I don't want to drink it. It's the affair, I don't want to have it. It's all of these ways that we transgress, you could say, from what our higher virtues are. Or whatever laws we've laid down for ourselves in a moment of clarity. That I've said, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. The senses then overpower us, as you say. What are the senses? The smell. It smells so good. It looks so good. Well, what happens is, here's what happens in my brain. If you've never eaten chocolate cake, if you've never smoked a cigarette, if you've never drank alcohol, you're not going to have that overwhelming, insatiable drive to do it. In the past, when I've done it, it has been pleasurable. It has given me a reward. So now what happens is, the mere smell of it triggers the whole cascade in my brain that wants that reward. Wants that reward, that's going to do anything that it can do to get that reward. But aside from smells and sights and sounds and memories of reward and pleasure, there's something else here. What else is here? What else are we? Consciousness. There's a consciousness here. And to simply give in to my sensory pulls is to deny the existence of my consciousness. It's to say, a smell entered my olfactory nerve, and therefore I ate the cake. Well, where's the I in that? That's just a chain reaction of nerve signals into my brain, around my brain for a while, out my arms, into my mouth. That's all it is, just been a cascade of signals. Where am I in that? So to give in to sensations and temptations like that is literally to say, there is no consciousness in me. Or I refuse to access that consciousness. I'm going to live just as tumbling cascades of firing of neurons and impact of one cell on another cell and another cell and another cell. But that's not what we are. You're not just a bunch of, 50 trillion cells. There's a you. There's a you that's there. And I know that because you could donate a few pints of that blood to somebody. They're not going to become you. You're not going to become less you. So you don't exist in the cells of your bloodstream. You exist separately from that. And this is where a spiritual practice is so important. Yes, the senses are very strong. And yes, if we have a decades-old habit of giving into them, they've become even stronger. I mean, think about it. Anybody here who's a parent or a teacher or who's ever babysat, what you know is children who are used to getting their way become absolutely intolerable if you don't give them their way. The more they get their way all the time, with no question, the less these children are going to ever be able to tolerate not getting their way. Their entire pattern and system of behavior is what I want, how I want it, when I want it. It's how they act. The senses are the same. Give in to them, everything they say, for decades. It's the equivalent of having, your 35-year-old child who never moved out of the house and has just decided to, stay home and let mom and dad do everything for them forever because that's what mom and dad have always done. Because no one's ever said no. And your senses become like that. They're going to just take over your existence, make you do their beck and call. But at some point you have to say, wait, there's a me here. And I'm not just a smoking cigarette. I'm not just a drinker of alcohol. I'm not just a haver of affairs. I'm not a teller of lies. I'm consciousness. And I have a say here. But here's what makes it so difficult. And here's where the real courage lies. Just as the first time you say no to your child, or someone else's child, you have to be prepared to sit through a temper tantrum. If you are afraid of that child's temper tantrum, you will be a slave to them forever. If your worst nightmare is that kid is going to throw a fit, well then you're just going to do whatever they say. And what happens inside us is sitting with the temptation and not giving into it brings up an incredible amount of discomfort within the self, and it is far more than you would anticipate by simply talking about chocolate cakes and cigarettes and, alcoholic beverages or affairs. It's very, very deep. Because there's a pattern and there's a habit, but it's become our entire way of being in the world. And what's at stake here is our entire way of being in the world. And when your higher consciousness says no, and that part of you that wants it and that is used to getting its way throws its internal fit, you have to have the courage to sit still. And you have to have the courage to cry if it's going to be tears, to sweat if it's going to be sweat, to do whatever you're going to need to do to get through it. To take a walk, whatever it is that's going to work for you. But you have to have the courage to face what's on the other side of that temptation. Because if the minute that anxiety starts rising within you that says, I've got to have it, I've got to do it, I've got to have it, I've got to do it, the minute that anxiety starts rising in you, if that worries you, you're gone. You then have become its slave. In the same way as the parents who are afraid of the fit the child's going to throw. You have to be prepared to sit there through it. And if you are, then what you'll find is, like the kid, it's going to scream and cry and kick its legs and do its stuff for a while. And eventually it's going to subside. And not that it'll never come again, but slowly, slowly you're going to be laying new patterns, which are patterns of freedom, patterns of choice, patterns of awareness and consciousness and mindfulness. And this is where the whole practice of mindfulness comes in. I respond to my senses mindlessly. I've eaten the chocolate cake before I even realized that I've eaten it. But if I practice mindfulness in my life, then when I get hit with these desires, with these calls of the flesh, of the senses, I'm going to have that tool of mindfulness. It's not going to make their pull any less hard, but it's going to prevent me from finding myself halfway through it without even knowing that I got in. It's going to give me that space to say, temptation, coming my way. All right, I need to sit down. All right, I need to go meditate. All right, I need to go to the banks of Ganga. All right, whatever it may be. But you're able to see it from far enough away that you know what to do. And then it doesn't hit you as hard. It's like if you were in the beach and you could see a wave coming from really far away. You've actually got the chance of getting out of the ocean before it hits. But if you're not paying attention and you only notice the wave when it's on top of your head, it's going to get you. So a practice of mindfulness in general is a very, very good tool.